Hi, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the slavery analogy and guide you through the critical analysis for essay number 4. So what we're doing is we are looking at Hoffman's text, the claim he makes, and the evidence he provides. And in this case, he's making a claim about how to convince people about climate change, and the type of evidence he's using is an analogy. So we want to read through the analogy and decide, do we agree with his position? Does he give adequate explanation? And are there enough comparison points, or are there actually fewer similarities? And that might mean that it's a false analogy. So that's up to you to decide. And what we want to do is focus on a few points in the text. So first of all, he's saying that the abolition of slavery is the same type of cultural shift we face in terms of ridding ourselves of our dependence on fossil fuels. And so there are 3 concessions that Hoffman makes on the top of page 75. You should definitely read over those, remembering that a concession is something that you're not arguing, that you're agreeing to. And then Hoffman is pretty clear when he says fossil fuels are our primary source of energy and they support our entire way of life. So do you agree with that? And the second thing is he talks about the fact that there were only 2 paths. One was a consensus-based path, which was what they followed in the United Kingdom, and ours was what he calls a pessimistic path in the United States. He points out that in the United States it ended in war. I don't think he is implying that we're going to go to war over fossil fuels. So I really wouldn't go down that path in this analysis. But you do want to ask yourself, is there more than one way of solving this? Or is he correct in implying that there's only 2 paths? Because remember, partly what's happening is he's using the analogy, but he doesn't always clearly explain the connections to climate. And so you, as a reader and making the critique, has to determine, is there enough evidence here? Is there enough explanation? And, do you bring enough background knowledge to the topic to understand the connections as well? He says also then, with climate change, many had engaged in a form of debate that is geared more towards humiliating and conquering those who disagree rather than reasoning with them. And so does he give you evidence of this? Do you believe this is true? And is this really important part of the analogy? Some other points to look at is that he says the third insight is the economic and political resistance that had to be overcome. Will there be economic and political resistance towards getting rid of our dependence on fossil fuels? That is a good question to ask. And does he give any evidence of this? And finally, he says, for the United States in particular, reducing fossil fuels threatens deep and powerful interests who resist change. So I just pulled out a few of the points he makes. Not that you have to talk about all of these, or you may find some others that are more particularly of interest to you in your analysis. But the point here is I want you to do a careful reading of this text and be sure you look at what he says and ask yourself, does he give sufficient explanation of the parallels between slavery and what he says about how it was resolved, and what he tells us or doesn't tell us about our dependence on fossil fuels. Okay? If you have any other questions, of course, please email me, and we'll see you online.